Well, hi there, and welcome to the bridge of the Here's to Us. We're going to take you on an in-depth tour, show you inside all the doors and the drawers, and how we have maximized the space that's here for storage, as well as how we have organized, I say we, Sam, this is Sam's office, how he has organized his space to make the best use of the bridge.
So let's go on a quick tour of the general arrangement of the bridge area. And this is coming up from the Lido deck on the starboard side. There are two steps. As you come up there, you see the throw ring buoy, as well as the kiddie fire extinguisher. And the kiddie fire extinguishers, over the last couple of years, some of them have been recalled. So ensure you go on and get your kiddie fire extinguisher serial numbers, and you get them replaced for free. But again, those have a 10-year life and something that you want to keep an eye on during your inspections of your vessel. And we have some artwork up there in the boat. Some of you see it during the videos. This is a close-up. I love this one. Good friends don't let you do stupid things alone. One of the things that really sold me on this boat was the visibility from the bridge and the all-weather capability, being shielded from the sun, not having to worry about canvas and isinglass. Those are full panels up there, so you can run in rain. You don't have to worry about getting wet. There are windshield wipers up there, air scoops on it on the side, and the visibility is just great. In addition to the tinted windows, there are some umbrella roll-up coverings there, and when we are at a marina, we can roll those down and get additional privacy or sunshade. Artwork there that is on the port side, know when to give up and have a margarita. As we continue there on the starboard side, we're going to come around. You'll see one of the speakers there. I'll talk a little bit more about the speaker system and the audio system on the boat, but air conditioner vents right there, as well as two cup holders. The seats here, you can put 4 adults on those seats facing forward. Another one of the speakers there. And those seats lift up, and we use them to stow. This one is one of the sunbrellas. The sunbrella that doesn't roll up is the one that covers the 3 forward windows. So we put that in the compartment underneath the seat, as well as some additional life preservers. And every once in a while we have extra lines. Sometimes we'll put those into the storage bins as well. Coming around, actually we're still up in the front here, and we're going to see the sunbrella that is installed on the front, and there is one of our holders for the cameras for some of the videos that we do. Below that there's a storage area as well, kind of a shelf where we put various items, small stuff, lines, and those types of things. You'll see we have some of our ground tackle there for a trip line or anchor buoy. And then in the front there are 2 doors that open up. The one on the left holds the 16,000 BTU air conditioner that is dedicated with separate controls for the bridge area, as well as an additional space here for more life preservers. Up on the top you'll see 2 portholes where if we have to fold down anything on the top, such as the wind vane or the VHF, not so much the VHF, but the FM radio or the anchor light, Rev goes up through those holes and gets on the top and folds them down. In the middle you'll see something that I found on Amazon, and I think we have a link to it on our resource page, but it is a really cool USB rechargeable lantern, and it's dimmable as well. This is looking toward the starboard side there, and you can see again the great visibility. Storage areas along the side where we'll sometimes put lines or equipment, towels, carry-on bags, whatever you can think of. On the other side here we do have space for some lube oil for the Sea Star steering system, as well as a windlass bar, and there's a machete there, and then gloves for tending the locks. And we get down to where the captain's seat and bench is, certainly enough room here for 3 to 4 adults with the captain's seat with the movable armrest in the center. As you sit in the captain's seat and you look over your left shoulder, you're looking aft and you'll see the ship's bell that's required for a certain length of boat. I can't remember it right now, but we have a ship's bell on there. And what I did was on Target is I found a couple wooden boxes that I have there, and I keep my various books that I use and waterway guides or travel guides or information that I might need readily available. So a great way to organize things there. And as you look up near the top, you'll see a separate air conditioner. That's the air conditioner that it is 12,000 BTUs, and that cools the Lido deck downstairs, which is fully enclosable as well with the tinted glass down there and the roll-up sunscreens. Here's the captain's seat, and below the captain's seat there is a storage compartment. You can put some of your maps if you have paper maps in there, or charts, more storage. And also in there, you should probably have this readily available, or in the new age you can have an electronic copy of this, but you need a copy. Any boat that is 39.4 feet or longer, you need a copy of the Navigation Rules and Regulations Handbook on board. This was the configuration when we purchased the Here's to Us in late 2017. And what you see there are 3 screens. And so on the top left you see a Garmin, I think it was a 12 or 14 inch screen, I can't remember, but I did not like the placement of it because it was in my field of view. Below that you'll see a Forono radar display, and then on the far right you'll see the original North Star GPS. So think about trying to synthesize all 3 of those screens. And of course, the original configuration was without that big Garmin 12 or 14 inch screen. I can't remember how big it was. But that's how it was built in 1999 and then upgraded by a previous owner. So I did not like it. And of course, the technology had improved. And so I hired somebody to put all Garmin equipment in. The other thing that this did not have, and we certainly wanted to have it, was an autopilot. So we're going to add a Garmin autopilot as well as some cameras. This is what it looks like in the current configuration. And you'll see that Garmin screen off to the left. It's 10 inch. I looked at a 12 inch, but 12 inch seemed a little bit too big for me. So the 10 inch was just fine, and we put it on a ram mount that's fully adjustable, so I can have that as I'm steering the boat. With my left hand, I can have access to the controls right there. So as you see me driving the boat and navigating along, I don't have to move at all. Everything is ergonomically centered for me. So now that Garmin screen, which we're going to take a look at in a little bit, encapsulates the autopilot. It has the cameras on there, it has the radar, and of course the chart plotter is on there. So everything is in one unit. And what we did was cover that up with starboard. We were originally going to go with a white starboard, but we really couldn't match the color that was on the existing base there, so what we did was go with black. Let's take a look at what that Garmin display looks like. You can arrange any combination that you want. This is one that I normally run with, and so on the left panel you will see the track that is there, and that track is, I normally plan on Navionics. I export the route to Active Captain, and then through a NEMA 2000 network it goes wirelessly into this Garmin plotter. Right now you can tell by the center lower panel, see that blue where it says L0.6, that the boat is coupled to the autopilot and it is steering the route that I have selected, and it is off course, left off course by 0.6, and so I can disengage that at any time and go to manual steering by pressing the right or left, the 1 degree right or 1 degree left or 5 degree left or 5 degree right, and I can put it in. It will still be on autopilot, but I'll be using heady hold. On the middle upper panel is a camera that looks into the engine room, and then it alternates also for my stern camera that I can keep an eye on what's going on in the back of the boat, and that's useful in docking. On the right side you'll see the various instrumentation readouts that are on there, all the way from distance to destination, the current time, the time to the next waypoint, a lot of information on there, as well as the depth and the speed. So you can see my depth here is 71.5 feet. which I have plenty of water below me, and my speed is 9.36 miles per hour. Now, a lot of people ask me, why do I use miles per hour? When it's a boat, it should be in knots. Well, along the rivers and a lot of the mile markers are in miles, so it helps me to be in miles per hour. And if you need to switch it over to knots, you can do that with the software. You can also put various displays up here. You can have just the chart, you can just have the sonar, you can have the wind. And let's take another look at another display. This is one that I use when I dock, because what I look at is my depth. In the middle there you can see the depth, 73.4 feet, and I also have a wind readout there, so I can tell what my wind is doing. And then I have my chart and an autopilot over there. So I use this a lot when I'm docking. Of course, I'm not on autopilot when I'm docking, so that's disengaged, but that's just what I like to have up there as I'm coming into a marina or anchorage. A lot more instrumentation, and there's a great capabilities. This is a Garmin XSV 7610. The 76 is the series. I think they're up to 8,000 now as the technology gets better and better, but it's a 10-inch display mounted on that ram mount. You can also get the radar function on here. I don't have it shown, but the radar comes on here, so it's all in one. Those 3 screens that we saw originally, everything is in one screen now. So this is what I normally run as, and you can see the steering wheel is there off to the right. I'll be running in this display here, and then I will also have a backup Navionics mounted on a suction cup phone holder, so that in case something happens here, I have redundancy. And it's always good to have a backup navigation to see how they are comparing as you move your boat along. One of the additional items I forgot to mention that shows up on our Garmin chart plotter is the AIS, Automatic Identification Service, and that is a Garmin 800. What I'm going to do now is take you from the port side to the starboard side and talk about instrumentation that is on the Carver 504 that we have. These are analog gauges, and as a pilot, I cut my teeth, so to speak, on analog gauges, but then later found out about glass, and so I've flown both analog gauges and glass, but I always come back to the simplicity of the analog gauges. And so I really like this cluster layout here. On the port side, you will see there are 2 gauges on the left. One is the forward main fuel capacity. That holds 232 gallons. And then the aft auxiliary has 112 gallons in it. The middle gauge on the top is the water temperature. And then to the right of that is the oil pressure. Below the oil pressure is the rudder angle indicator. And then in the middle on the bottom is the voltmeter for the left engine. You'll see the big gauge on the top right is the RPM, and this boat has a synchronizer on it, which I'll show you in one of the next panels how to engage that synchronizer. So a real well laid out instrument cluster, as I call it. To the right of that, you'll start to see the air conditioner controls for the 16,000 BTU air conditioner that is for the upper bridge. And then you'll see the Ritchie compass, the power damp compass that is there. And forward of that, you can barely see it, but there's a little puck there that is for the Sirius XM. And then we get to the starboard gauge cluster. And it kind of is mirrored with a little bit differences there. You'll see that RPM gauge. Then you'll see to the right of that on the top is the oil pressure. You have water temperature for the starboard engine. And then you have the fuel gauges. Again, the forward starboard, that contains 232 gallons of diesel fuel, and then the aft is 112 gallons. And then you have the voltmeter for the starboard engine. And then there's something different on here. It's what's called a Fireboy, a halon system. We reconfigured this in about a year or so ago because we had it tested, and the newer standards is that if a fire is sensed in the engine room, 4 things have to happen. Well, both engines have to shut down, so 1 and 2 have to shut down, or left and right, port starboard engines. The generator has to shut down, and the blowers have to shut down. So we had to have that reconfigured, and I thought it was a good idea to do that. So once the fire is under control, you can restart the unaffected systems through the override on this. To the left, the bottom left, you'll see a Lowrance depth gauge. That's in addition to the depth gauge that we have on the Garmin. And then you'll see on the far left there is a temperature sensor that we just have for ambient temperature. Real well laid out as far as I'm concerned, simplicity. And I routinely, as we're underway for 6 or 8 hours, I will take readings of these gauges every hour in a log. And that keeps me focused on what's happening with the engine, oil pressure, and temperature, and fuel. Let's talk about that fuel, and this is the starboard instrument cluster here, and let's focus on the 2 gauges that are further right. If it's 232 gallons full, and a half would be half of that, is I like to, this is just a technique, you can do it any way you want, but I think of that needle in 30 seconds of a tank. For example, half of a tank would be 16 30 seconds, and 3/4 of a tank would be 24 30 seconds. So as I look at that starboard main gauge right now, that needle looks to me like it's about 12 30 seconds. And what I'll do is I'll write that down so that I know I also have a chart that tells me how many gallons are in 1/32 of a tank. That way when I go to fill up, I can estimate how many gallons I will need. And the same thing with the auxiliary gauge down there, although that only contains 112, 115 gallons, somewhere around there. So I have another chart that tells me how many 1/32 of a tank is. So just my technique for doing it. To the right of that starboard instrumentation cluster is my bow and stern thruster. And they are Vitas, and they run off of a 24-volt system. The bow thruster has 2 12-volt batteries, and they are hooked up so that they run at 24 volts. And the stern thruster also hooked up to a similar system, but that system also runs the Freedom Lift. And it is engaged by a lever that energizes it, and then press on that button, and away we go. We can thrust the bow and the stern. And for a boat this size, really, you really need at least a bow thruster, and the stern thruster is really nice as well in the docking of the boat. Let's go back over to the port side and look at the instrumentation controls that are here. Along the top, you have 3 wiper controls for the port, the center, and the starboard. And then along the right, going vertical, are the manual controls for the bilge pump, the forward and mid and aft bilges. Going from the middle on the left, we have bilge blowers. Those will turn on the bilge blowers manually. When the engines start up, the bilge blowers come on automatically, and when the engine shuts down, they go off automatically. But there are some times you may want to evacuate some of the fumes, so you can manually turn them on. And then below that are the ignition switches, and then there is a fuel transfer switch there. Now, I've never used that because when I transfer fuel, I do it in the engine room, and you can transfer between the port and the starboard main tanks to balance up, because the generator pulls from the starboard tank. So if you run your generator, you may have to move fuel to keep it even from the starboard to the port. While you can do it with this switch, I have a meter down in the engine room that will tell me how many gallons I transfer between each tank. In the center, you'll see the Sea Star tilt helm, and that requires some fluid once in a while, and we just kind of keep a check on that, but it's also a tilt helm. And then we have the right controls here on the starboard side, which is the horn. Test that every once in a while. The light panel that will light up the lights for the control panels at night if you're operating at night. Then you have lights for both the anchor. Turn that wafer switch to the left, puts the anchor light on, and turn it to the right, it just puts the nav lights on. The bridge lights there, illumination along the walkway. And then to the left you have a lighter switch, but we don't smoke, so we pull that out and we put a USB in there, and it helps keep our phones charged up there. Synchronizer. Okay, so some of you have seen where we are running the boat and that left throttle is all the way forward and the right throttle is somewhere in the middle. With this system here is once I'm about over 1,000 RPM, first I turn the synchronizer, I turn that wafer switch to the right, a green light will illuminate, tell me that the synchronizer is working, and then I'll push that left throttle full forward, and then that left throttle, or the, as you're thinking about it, the port throttle, will be slave to the starboard throttle so that the RPMs will match up and you don't have to sit there and fiddle with them and try to get them matched up. So it's a really neat tool. Next to that is the windlass, and I can operate the windlass from there, or when Rev is out on the bow and we're anchoring, she can operate the windlass as long as it's energized through foot pedals up or down. Now to get that windlass energized, there's 2 steps that you have to do, actually 3 steps, so that make sure that that anchor is not going to come loose and run underneath the boat while you're running. First, there's a safety switch under the steps in the salon that has to be engaged, and then there's also a pull switch that I have to pull that's under the thruster controls to the right and lower of this. And then Rev also has to take off the safety chain on the front. And so if you hit that switch inadvertently, it's not like the windlass is going to go up or down. A lot of things have to happen to make sure that the windlass can go up and down. So kind of a safety feature. Underneath, we have the access to all of the circuit breakers, switches to turn on the various components there, from lights to blowers to bilge pumps to wipers to the various chart plotter, AIS, and all those items that we have on board the Here's to Us. We also have a VHF radio, standard marine VHF radio, the ICM 502, that probably someday needs to be upgraded to a more modern radio, but it does just fine for us. This is my favorite on the boat, is a Fusion UD 750 stereo, and it not only has Sirius, but it has Bluetooth, and so we have that set up so that we can Bluetooth it to any one of the 3 phones that we have on board. We carry T-Mobile for each of us, and then we also have a backup Verizon, and we also have the iPad that it can be Bluetooth to, so it's set up for that, whatever we want to play. Or we have a subscription to Sirius XM on there, and there are 10 speakers on the boat. There are 4 in the bridge area, there are 2 forward, and there are 4 in the cabin, and there are also 2 in the cockpit. So a 4-zone system with 10 or 12, I can't remember exactly, speakers aboard the Here's to Us, so we can get music where we want it and control the volume. There's also a separate receiver that you saw in the Lido deck tour as well, so if you're down there you don't have to run up to the bridge. There's a repeater down at the minibar. There is one of the speakers that's on board, and so the sound system, really one of our favorites aboard the Here's to Us. Well, hope you enjoyed this tour of the Here's to Us and the bridge area. We look forward to seeing you out there on future YouTube videos.